I'm G-Fed. Sick. I spent the last 17 months going to every single FBS football stadium in the lower 48. I've been ranking them conference by conference. And today, it's time for our totally unbiased rankings of the MAC football stadiums. I'm just playing. Western Michigan's not the number one stadium on the list. Sorry if that spoiled the video for you 15 seconds into it. But as you can see, I'm a MAC guy. I went to a MAC school. I lived in MAC country most of my life. And I've been to a lot of these stadiums more than once. This conference means a lot to me. I'm excited to get into this video. Just make sure you subscribe first to follow along with all the videos we have done and are going to do, including the grand finale video at the very end, ranking every single stadium. Appreciate y'all. Number 12 easily is UB Stadium at Buffalo. Similar to Sam Houston State, who was last in the Conference USA rankings, Buffalo is one of 3 schools that has a track around their field. And is actually one of 2 now, because I found out from my last video, Sam Houston State got rid of their track around their field. Shout out to the Bearcats. Bearcats with a K. All that aside though, Buffalo is a worse offender of the track around the field situation, because just look at this thing. This is atrocious. Their front row seats are basically field level, and they have end zone seats behind the bend of the track. And people sit there too. This is a real picture from a real Buffalo football game. What are they doing? This is a 29,000 seat stadium, and getting my telestrator out, I'm probably never ever sitting right here, or anywhere over here. How many bad seats is that? Like 5 or 10K? That's like a third of the stadium. Outside of that, the stadium's pretty basic. There's not much insulation at all for being in one of college football's coldest climates, and the concourse is fine. And it was also built in 1993, which is relatively new for a college football stadium. It's not like the program is handicapped to an old stadium with too much history attached to the university to do anything about it. Buffalo made a conscious decision to build a super mid stadium at the time and have not put the resources into it to keep up. Every stadium left on this list at least gets a passing grade, and I wouldn't say there's a stadium in the MAC that's really over the top impressive. But with that said, this 7 to 11 range is a straight crapshoot. Somebody could have these 5 in any order, and I would not push back on it at all. A person willing to get in an argument about bottom tier MAC stadiums does sound like my type of guy though. At number 11, I have the Doi at Bowling Green State University. Is Bowling Green the only state named school where the state part of their name hardly ever gets used? It's got to be right. This feels like the smallest stadium in the MAC. Not by capacity, but like it's really short. The bleachers don't go too high and the press box isn't towering. It honestly kind of sneaks up on you if you're not looking for a football stadium. I think the orange looks really good on it. It's just enough to give it a little bit of flair without doing too much. And I think this little floral section of seats behind the end zone is really cute. But largely it's just a lot of metal seats around a football field more than it is a true football stadium. I do really like the Stroh Center though. That is a dang nice MAC basketball arena. At number 10, I have Dick Stadium at Kent State. I know. It's hilarious. I'll give you guys a second to regroup yourself. We good? Great. This stadium is structurally pretty similar to Bowling Green's, but it's a little bit nicer and a little bit bigger. The home side is built out like a true stadium and actually feels very big walking up to it. But once again, the rest of it's just a lot of metal bleachers dragged up to a football field. The Ohio border in the turf behind the goalpost is really cool. And instead of statues or plaques for their legends, they have these like permanent table tents at their cocktail tables, which could be a good conversation starter. Maybe you're walking your beers back to your cocktail table, run to a fellow Kent State fan, and boom, you can go talk about Josh Cribbs being right there. Who doesn't love that? The student section also has its own sideline of the stadium to itself, which I think I'd really enjoy if I was a student. But overall, the place just isn't that charming. It's a big metal stadium with more concrete and parking lots around it than anything else. At number 9, I have Huskie Stadium at Northern Illinois. This stadium's about the same age as Bowling Green's and Kent State's, but it feels a lot older, and I think that's because it's a little bit thicker. There's a lot less metal and a lot more brick. Like so much brick it goes all the way down and around the bleachers, making them 2 triangular prisms on each side of the field. And by doing this, the concourse at NIU is basically indoors, which is the best feature to me. I've watched my fair share of MAC games in the bitter cold. It sucks, and having an escape from that is massive. But I have it at number 9 just because of how it's built and where it's at makes for a super bland stadium. There's a few different super cute Husky statues around that I really like, but outside of that, those 2 bleachers you mentioned is basically the whole stadium. On the Wikipedia page for the stadium, there's a 4-paragraph section about a $138 million overall of NIU athletics, a section with no dates on it at all, which is always a major red flag. But hey, maybe that's what they sold the Mountain West on. Who knows? Too bad despite being 9-12 on this list, a team that's replacing NIU in the MAC is an even worse stadium. My number 8 MAC stadium is Schumann Stadium at Ball State. This is the smallest MAC stadium by capacity, but it is the first one on the list that I do think has a little bit of charm to it. I don't love boosting stadiums on charm because it's hard to quantify. It means different things to different people. But something about this place, whether it's how it's built or how it's nestled into campus, I find it a little bit more endearing than the other places we ranked. The end zone area looks really nice. Watching a game on this hill with like a picnic blanket seems like an immaculate vibe. But I can't put it any higher because this stadium is pretty painfully average. It doesn't really have any quality I would say is like top 3 in the conference. Number 7 is probably the most controversial take I'm going to have on this list. And that's the Factory, Rynearson Stadium at Eastern Michigan. I have 2 big reasons for this. One, this place has an identity, and that's more than you can say for any other stadium on the list right now. Even the most tapped in college football fans probably couldn't tell you one thing about Ball State Stadium. But those people might know Eastern Michigan has a great field, and they might know it goes by the Factory too. Building that brand is so big for any program, especially a G5 one where gaining attention is an uphill battle. EMU has been a much more respectable program since the rebrand. I don't think that's a coincidence. And the second biggest reason is this man right here. I guess it pays to have the best active NFL player in the conference go to your school. Literally. Before this past season, Rynearson Stadium was committing the ultimate sin of college football stadiums, having a track around the field. And Max Crosby basically single-handedly put up the funds to remove it. I love so much of everything he could have done with his money. He just goes in there and says, yeah, that right there, we're not having that shit. The track still being there would have negated everything I said about the stadium and had it at 11th, maybe 10th. So why did it only jump to 7? Simply put, the stadium still isn't that nice. There's a bunch of metal bleachers on each side of the field. But hey, believe it or not, it is still the most viewed college football video that we've made. Staying in Michigan, at number 6, I have Kelly Shore Stadium at Central Michigan University. This to me is the first true surefire stadium on this list. Full horseshoe style seating, and then you got facility at the end to really enclose the whole thing. And this is the only college football stadium that I myself have played an organized football game in. Don't believe me? Ready for this? Ready for this? Boom! My team actually lost this game by quite a bit, but you better believe that receiver has nightmares still from G-Fed Island. Also, if you want to know why I didn't play D1 football, this guy in the picture with me, Tony Poljan, he did. Actually at Central Michigan, and then Virginia, and then the Ravens for a cup of coffee. These 2 people are not built the same. Do I have much more to offer on the stadium? Not really. It's kind of a boring stadium, but it is structurally a step above the rest of them. Now at number 5, we finally made it. It's Waldo Stadium, and in my humble and unbiased opinion, the best university in the MAC, Western Michigan University. This will be the hardest stadium for me to evaluate because I've watched more games at this stadium than any other stadium on this list combined 5 times over. But let's get to the objective truth. It is the first stadium on the list with a full bowl. I know the corners are 3 rows high. It counts. I don't care. And it's built into a hill, which makes it the only stadium in the conference that's not built on or into flat ground. I've also always enjoyed that the walls around the field say welcome to Kalamazoo or welcome to the zoo. I hope Western never changed that. But in all fairness, this is my biggest gripe right now. As many of you know, on-field ads got approved in college football recently, and Western Michigan's is the worst in college football. It covers in total 44 yards of the field, and it is blue. I'm not even that upset about an on-field ad. Get all the money you need for the school. But can it please be black, or white, or brown, or gold? We have a pretty deep color palette to work with. Is that enough to put Central Michigan Stadium ahead of Western's, though? Absolutely not. The chips. Starting right here is where we get into the top tier MAC stadiums. And that begins with the Glass Bowl at Toledo. This stadium, one, has the coolest name and the coolest features of any stadium in the conference. It's a really old stadium. It got the name around World War II because it had a lot of glass features at the time. And the city of Toledo had, and I think to a lesser extent still has, a really big glass industry. It was actually known as the glass capital of the whole entire world. But today it doesn't really have much more glass than a regular stadium. It's actually a lot of stone, but the stone finish looks really, really good. It even makes it feel Castle-esque in some places, like these corners of the end zone that look really, really cool, but in reality are just equipment sheds. There's also a pretty well-publicized rocket right outside the stadium pointing directly at Bowling Green, the perfect amount of rivalry pettiness. And it's the host of the Italian Football League's version of the Super Bowl. Not like Italian-American, legit Italy's football league flew from Italy to Toledo, Ohio to play their championship game in 2023. And they're doing it again this summer. Not a bad thing to check out if you live in Ohio and you want a unique football experience. Number 3 is Peden Stadium at Ohio University. This is the most scenic stadium in the MAC, and really the only stadium in the MAC with much scenery at all. Some people might be surprised that Ohio is scenic, but it does get really hilly around that southeast portion by the Appalachians. The concourse is pretty tight, but it's also really insulated. Like I said before, that's going to be a huge plus. And I ran into a little critter while I was there, which is also a huge plus. It's not the nicest stadium ever, but it's really, really charming. The vibes of Ohio Stadium and the number 2 stadium is what to me sends it straight to the top. And that number 2 stadium is Yager Stadium at Miami of Ohio. I love a good statue setup, and the Cradle of Coaches is the coolest in the G5. Paul Brown, Woody Hayes, John Harbaugh, Sean McVay. That's just 4 of 11 statues behind the scoreboard in the end zone. It is the best installment in the entire conference. Miami, Ohio is also a great college town. It's in the middle of nowhere, and seeing a stadium emerge from miles and miles of field just hits a little bit different. I really enjoy the MAC representation outside of the stadium. And on the other side of the end zone from the Cradle of Coaches, the Athletic Performance Center looks really new and really nice too. The thing keeping it from number 1 for me though is it's not that great of a stadium build. It's honestly not that far off of the ones at the bottom of the conference, so I can't have all of those all the way down there and then put Miami at number 1. It just wouldn't be right. But they invested a lot into the unintended spaces to make it look great. The amount of legends that came through this university makes it feel like a piece of college football history you just have to visit. Number 1 is so much nicer than every other MAC stadium, there's nowhere else I could have put it. And that's InfoCision Stadium at Akron. It's the only stadium in the conference that's relatively new. Its first season was 2009. And I debated putting Miami or Ohio U above this because the vibes aren't the best. It's on campus, but Akron's campus is in the middle of the city, so there's not that much of a college feel. It kind of feels like a small pro stadium in a way, but it's so much nicer than every other MAC stadium. It'd be a slap in the face to not have a number 1. It's tied for the biggest stadium in the MAC by capacity, and with 2 levels of seating on both sides of the field, it feels like the biggest. It definitely has the biggest press box and the biggest club that I would say puts it on the same level as anyone in the G5. Plus, there's a lot of university buildings connected to it, making it feel even more big and really insulating the inside of it. It's also newer than every MAC stadium by, on average, like 50 years, so everything is very nice, very up to date. In a way, I kind of hate that my 2 conference champions are the newest, nicest stadiums. I promise it's not going to be like that for the full series. And for the record, I would put UTEP Sun Bowl ahead of Akron if they were in the same conference. But the gap in quality is just way, way too wide in the MAC. That's all I have for today. If you want to watch the Conference USA video that I've been mentioning, it's right here. If you're watching this video at a later date, I've made a playlist for every other video that I posted in this series. You can go check that out. And of course, please like and subscribe to keep up with the series and all the other on-site adventures you have coming up on this page. Appreciate y'all.